Japan is one of the most fascinating countries in human history. It is a land of emperors, samurai, shoguns, isolation, discipline, war, modernization, destruction, and rebirth. For centuries, Japan developed in ways that were both connected to Asia and completely unique to itself. It built one of the most refined warrior cultures in history. It created powerful military governments. It resisted foreign domination. It transformed itself into a modern empire. It experienced catastrophic defeat in the Second World War. And then, in one of history's most astonishing turnarounds, it rebuilt itself into one of the world's most advanced nations. But how did Japan become Japan? How did a chain of islands on the edge of East Asia produce such a distinct civilization? How did the age of samurai emerge? Why did Japan isolate itself from much of the world for centuries? In this video, we are going to walk through the history of Japan in a simple, clear, and engaging way, from its early origins to the modern nation we know today. To understand Japan, we have to begin long before the samurai. The earliest history of Japan reaches back into prehistory. For thousands of years, the islands were inhabited by early communities who lived by hunting, fishing, and gathering. One of the earliest major cultures was the Jomon culture, known for its distinctive pottery, some of the oldest in the world. These people lived in small communities and developed a culture deeply shaped by nature, ritual, and local life. Later came the Yayoi period, which brought major change. New agricultural methods, especially wet rice farming, spread into Japan. Metal tools and new social structures appeared. Farming supported larger communities. Hierarchies became stronger. Power became more concentrated. And slowly, the foundations of a more organized society began to emerge. Over time, local clans rose in influence. Among them, one ruling line gradually gained special authority, the line that would become associated with the imperial family. This is one of the most remarkable features of Japanese history. Japan's emperor is often described as the oldest hereditary monarchy in the world. Although the real political power of emperors changed dramatically across time, the imperial institution remained a powerful symbol of continuity. In the early centuries of state formation, Japan was heavily influenced by China and Korea. This was a crucial phase in Japanese development. Japan borrowed writing systems, elements of administration, legal concepts, Buddhism, architecture, philosophy, and court culture from the Asian mainland. Chinese civilization in particular had a profound influence. But Japan did not simply copy what it received. It adapted these influences and transformed them into something distinctly Japanese. This creative adaptation would become one of Japan's defining historical strengths. During the Yamato period and later the Nara period, a more centralized political order began to take shape. The imperial court attempted to build a stronger state, inspired in part by Chinese imperial models. Buddhism spread more deeply. Then came the Heian period, one of the most refined eras in Japanese history, centered around the imperial court in Heian-kyo, now Kyoto. This age is often remembered for elegance, ritual, poetry, literature, and aristocratic culture. It was during this world that one of the greatest works of classical literature was produced, The Tale of Genji, often described as one of the world's first great novels. But beneath the beauty of the court, power was changing. As central authority weakened in practice, powerful families and regional warriors gained influence. Landholding patterns shifted. Court nobles struggled to maintain real control over distant provinces, and a new military elite began to rise. That military elite would eventually produce one of the most famous classes in world history, the samurai. The samurai were not simply warriors in the romantic sense. They were members of a military and social order. Following major conflict between rival clans, Minamoto no Yoritomo emerged victorious and established the Kamakura shogunate. This was a decisive turning point. Real power now moved away from the imperial court and toward a military government. The emperor still existed, but the center of effective power had shifted. This basic pattern would define much of Japanese history for centuries. Japan now had two layers of authority, the emperor as the sacred figure, and the shogun as the military ruler. The Kamakura period also faced one of the most dramatic military threats, the Mongol invasions. In the 13th century, Kublai Khan attempted to conquer Japan. Twice, massive invasion forces approached. Twice, Japan resisted. The invasions failed for several reasons, including fierce defense and destructive storms that later became famous as the kamikaze, or divine wind. These failed invasions became deeply symbolic in Japanese memory. Political tensions continued. Warrior families competed for power. This gave way to new struggles and eventually to another major military regime, the Ashikaga shogunate. Yet this period was far from peaceful. Fragmentation and civil conflict. This age of conflict is often called the Sengoku period, the age of warring states. It was one of the most violent and transformative phases. Powerful warlords fought to dominate the country. Castles rose. Samurai warfare intensified. And then came three men who would change the course of history forever. The first was Oda Nobunaga. Nobunaga was ruthless, brilliant, and determined to break the old order. The second was Toyotomi Hideyoshi. The third was Tokugawa Ieyasu. After further conflict, Tokugawa emerged as the ultimate victor. In 1603, he established the Tokugawa shogunate. This began the Edo period. Stability after generations of war. Orderly, control, discipline, hierarchy, stronger center. Under Tokugawa rule, Japan developed a rigid social system. At the top stood the samurai, followed by peasants, artisans, and merchants. Daimyo were controlled through systems designed to prevent rebellion. The shogunate imposed discipline. One of the most famous features of Tokugawa Japan was its relative isolation, restricted foreign trade, and heavily limited contact with the outside world. This policy was known as Sakoku. Japan was far more closed to the world. Order, not static. Cities grew, commerce expanded, culture flourished. Edo, now Tokyo, became one of the largest cities in the world. Urban life became more dynamic. Theater, woodblock prints, and merchant culture expanded. Complex and vibrant society. Then came the shock that forced Japan into a new era. In 1853, Commodore Matthew Perry arrived with warships and demanded that Japan open relations. This was a humiliating strategic moment. The old system looked exposed. Crisis, resistance versus adaptation. Out of this turmoil came the Meiji Restoration. In 1868, the shogunate fell, and power was formally restored to the emperor. But this was not simply a return to ancient rule. It was the beginning of a revolutionary transformation. Fast modernization, industry, military, power. Japan's leaders launched one of the fastest modernization programs in world history. Industry grew, railways were built, modern education spread. A new military was created. Study of Western science, modern power, shocked the world. Imperial force, darker side. Modernization also had a darker side. As Japan grew stronger, it became more imperial. It expanded into Taiwan and Korea. Nationalism and militarism intensified. Escalation, war, destruction. Second World War, catastrophic collapse. Atomic bombs, surrender, rebuilding, economic recovery. In 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. The war became catastrophic. Japanese cities were bombed. In August 1945, the United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Human destruction was immense. Japan surrendered. Collapse, trauma, total transformation, rebuild, economic miracle. Japan had lost its empire, but not its capacity to rebuild. Remarkable economic recovery, extraordinary growth, industry boomed, technology advanced, exports surged, efficiency and discipline, innovation, global giant, automobiles and electronics, modern life, Tokyo powerful, continuity, tradition. This was the era in which modern Japan emerged as a global economic giant. Its automobiles, electronics, engineering, and industrial systems shaped world markets. Its cities became symbols of density, order, and modern life. Tokyo grew into one of the most powerful urban centers on Earth. At the same time, Japan maintained deep continuity with its past. Modern Japan is highly advanced, but it is also deeply marked by older traditions. The emperor still exists as a national symbol. Shrines and temples remain central to cultural life. Seasonal rituals continue. Historical memory still matters, and the samurai, though long gone as a class, remain powerful in the imagination of Japan and the world. Japan today is a democratic constitutional monarchy. Japan is one of the most developed countries on Earth. But the road to modern Japan was not simple. It passed through early state formation, court culture, and military rule. It passed through centuries of feudal order, isolation, forced opening, rapid modernization, empire, total war, devastation, and recovery. Again and again, Japan reinvented itself. That is what makes its history so extraordinary. It is the story of a society that borrowed from others without losing itself. A society that adapted under pressure. A society that produced beauty and discipline, hierarchy and innovation, isolation and global power. From the imperial court of Kyoto to the age of samurai. From Tokugawa order to Meiji transformation. From imperial expansion to post-war recovery. Japan was shaped by continuity and rupture at the same time. Its history matters far beyond Japan itself. It helps explain the balance of power in East Asia and the rise of modern industrial states. It explains the impact of imperialism, the violence of the 20th century, and the possibilities of national reinvention. When people think about Japan, they imagine samurai. They imagine cherry blossoms, temples, technology, anime, or Tokyo. And those things are part of the story. But the deeper story is larger. It is about power. It is about resilience. It is about adaptation. It is about identity. It is about how a nation can change dramatically without fully breaking from its past. A chain of islands became a court civilization. A court civilization became a warrior society. A warrior society became a unified state. A unified state became an empire. An empire was destroyed. And from that destruction emerged one of the most advanced countries in the modern world. That arc is one of the great transformations. Japan is not simply a story of tradition versus modernity. It is the story of how both can exist together, collide and reshape each other. That is why the history of Japan continues to fascinate people everywhere. It is one of history's clearest examples of how discipline and culture shape destiny. And in many ways, that story is still unfolding. Subscribe for more videos on nations, empires, and civilizations. To understand the present, we must understand the past. Because few stories make that clearer than the story of Japan. Subscribe for more. The History of Japan Explained.